Chair Beamer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So committee reports 12A, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Mayor Leal.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I will move the recommendation with a slight a modification of wording right at the end. And I want to thank Councillor Purnell. The last line should read, be it resolved that council assume all reasonable costs within policy for Councillor Duguay to attend FCM's board of directors.
All right, thank you. And
if I could continue.
Okay, so do we have to make a separate vote on that? Okay, so we'll just speak to that amendment, Mayor Leal, and I don't think there'll be too much discussion around this. So just speaking to this one amendment, comments or questions? Councillor LaChica to the amendment.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, to the mover. I'm just curious what the meaning of reasonable is. Could you define that? Do we have some scope? And just another question that's connected to that, part B, what budget line is this coming from? Thank you.
In terms of reasonable cost, Councillor Chica, I would think like reasonable cost for a hotel room. I'm not sure what the average rate would be. I think it's Calgary, but you know, we would reasonable cost would be like $200 a night as opposed to $3,000 a night. Things like that with reasonable cost within reason. I can only kind of give you guidelines of the provincial government. They would look at hotel costs, looking at between $200 and $400 a night. There'd be a cap on lunches, which I think was $14 for lunch, $14 for breakfast, and $22 for dinner. So those are the framework that the provincial government would use for when members would be traveling on government business.
Thank you.
Those are 2018 numbers, by the way.
Yes.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could just make a couple of comments. First of all, the budget line, still curious about the budget line. And secondly, I just wanted to state municipalities are facing such an incredible pressure because of changes and us having to bear the load of so much we haven't had to bear before. So that I just want to emphasize how important it is that we sit at tables and that we're present and that we're representing our city of Peterborough, whether it's at the federal level, the provincial level, or at our local level tables. And we need to have allyship. We need to be sharing best practices.
Okay, so Councillor Chica, I just want to keep this to that amendment right now.
I'm just qualifying. I agree with the fact that we need to invest in representation, but I would suggest that we decide. I think we can all imagine what a reasonable number is, and we've been given the low number of 3,000. Would that not be, and I would ask for a friendly amendment, would that not be a reasonable number for flight and hotel for a trip to Calgary this year?
All right, so Mayor Leal, is it possible to put in a number, $3,000, $4,000, instead of the term reasonable?
I'm trying to, I mean, I don't know what a flight to Calgary is in 2024. I mean, $4,000 may be absolutely reasonable as a cap.
Okay, so we'll go 4,000. Okay. Mr. Reyna, what is there? What specific budget line is Councillor Duguay's travel going to come from?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll pass it on to the Commissioner of Finance.
Mr. Chairman, with the councillor expense budget, each councillor has been allocated up to $5,000 dedicated to their own expenses. Given the threshold that's being proposed here, it may come within that funding envelope. If the councillor's expenses were beyond that, I think we would be looking to his worship in the mayor's budget, and pending anything beyond that, yet again, perhaps to the city's general contingency. Thank you.
Okay, so I see a whole bunch of hands. So I'll just make sure this is just for the one amendment of $4,000. So speaking to the amendment, I have Councillor Reel, Hakey, Burke, Crowley speaking to the amendment of $4,000. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair, I'm a little lost here. I mean, we got an amendment here. But the whole thing is if you're in favor of spending $3,000 to $10,000 to allow Councilor Duguay to go to apply to FCM and do whatever. So I would have to vote no until we come back to the main motion so I can speak to it.
Yep.
Because I think that a legitimate question would ask, what's the budget line? Well, the commissioner says $5,000. Well, we don't have $5,000. We have so much for communication. We have so much for if we want to go to a conference, that may add up to $5,000. But my way of thinking, I can't go to the amendment right now. I want to go back to the main motion and speak to it.
No, that's fair. So I'll put you on the list for the main motion. So just to be clear, page 54 right now says, be it further resolved that council assume all costs associated with Councillor Kevin Duguay's attending FCM's Board of Directors meetings. The amendment assumes costs up to $4,000. So that's what we're going to vote on now. Whether it passes or doesn't pass, then we'll come back to the main motion. So I'll put you back on the list, Councillor Reel. Councillor Hakey, just to that $4,000, you're okay. Councillor Burke to the amendment.
The amendment, I think I was listening, but I was confused by the answer because whether it's the amendment or the main motion, I was under the assumption that this was above and beyond our councillor budget, which the previous speaker mentioned is segregated into 3 different categories, I think. Can we just get clarity? Because the answer that I heard was that this would just be part of that.
So, Mr.
So
Freeman,
is this separate or is this part of our existing councillor budget, please?
Mr. Freeman, I think you mentioned originally that this $4,000 would be a part of Mr. Duguay's $5,000 budget. Is that the plan, or is this above the $5,000 budget? In addition to the $5,000 budget?
Mr. Chairman, I would defer to his worship. If his worship wants it above the councillor's allocation, then that is his prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, if we put a cap on this, if it's 4,000, if it's slightly above it, as I've done too many requests for councillors in the past, I just take it out of the mayor's budget.
Okay, so this will be above Councillor Duguay's $5,000 budget. So 5,000 plus the 4,000.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just rolling with the flow, going with the flow. So the where we're at right now is that the 4,000, we've established that 4,000 is reasonable, and that the line item to the councillor's question, the budget line item where that is coming from is the mayor's budget. Is that where we're at?
Yes.
And that's what we're voting on? Okay, thank you.
Good points. Any further questions to this amendment? Councillor Parnell to the amendment.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, is there anything stopping any one of us from allocating part of our own allowance to, if the expenses were to exceed $4,000, could I take some of my allowance, because we never use it all anyway, to help out our fellow colleague?
I'm sure that could be done.
Okay.
I'll just answer the question.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions just to this amendment of $4,000? So be it further resolved that council assumes costs up to $4,000 from the mayor's budget associated with Councillor Kevin Duguay's attending FCM's Board of Directors meetings. We'll take a vote.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just sent that latest amendment to my colleague here. So just take a moment to load it. That would be intended, Mr. Chair, to replace the existing motion.
We're taking a vote. I'll put you on the list.
I'm sorry, I was remiss. I feel very uncomfortable voting on a matter that would pertain to me personally as a councillor. I need a clarification from the clerk. If I abstain, Mr. Clerk, is that considered a negative vote?
Mr. Chair, that is correct. Thank you.
Thank you. I will proceed. I will participate in the voting.
Councillor Bond, we're just waiting for your vote. Okay, so Councillor Bond, the debate's over. We don't want to debate when 10 others have voted. Yep. Take your time. All right, that is carried. So back to the main motion with that amendment. I have Councillor Reel, Parnell, Mayor Leal. Councillor Reel.
To the chair, I think my, one of my questions was answered is where does the budget for $3,000 to $10,000 come from? Because I'm asking that question because I would want to bring a friendly amendment that all councillors be given a budget of $3,000 to an upset of $10,000 to be used for conferences, communication, and public relations, so that I can do my job as a city councillor for the people that elected me, and that's the constituents of Ashburn. So I don't have the funds to do that properly. So I'm looking to the mayor that this is a friendly amendment. If you're going to give to one, then you should give to us all. That's the way I look at it. I can use that money, whatever that number is, to an upset of $10,000 to communicate with the people that elected me, because of any indications of the communication that's happened, especially in the last month, of how we're communicating with our public, then we are doing a sorrowful job of doing it. And I need the money so that I can perhaps hire somebody to do public relations and communications for me. And that's why I'm making the motion that all of us, and like I reiterate, if you're giving to one, then you should give to all. And so I want my share of the $3,000 to $10,000 so I can do the job that I am elected to do for the constituents of the city of Peterborough.
So Councillor Reel, I'm going to, I think you raised a good point. I think that's a budget matter. We'd be looking at significant money. So I think you raise very legitimate points. You really do. But I think that's something that should be looked at budget. It would be contradictory. This is just specifically for FCM for one councillor. But I think the mayor's taking notes, and at budget, I think that can be raised an equal increase for all councillors. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Reel. So I have Councillor Parnell, Mayor Leal, Councillor Baldwin, Burke. Councillor Parnell? Then I'm going to, sorry, Councillor LaChica, then Councillor Parnell. Councillor LaChica, speaking to the whole report.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, because I think this is something that we need to establish, because it is part of our strategic plan for us to be doing advocacy for our municipality based on what's coming forth federally. We're getting funding on a federal level for housing. We are having to deal with a province that has been rolling out legislation right, left, and center, and municipalities are holding so much of what's come forth. We need to be advocating for ourselves and for our taxpayers. We do these things at these tables if we're part of executive boards of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There's a Green Municipal Fund that gives so much funding to the climate initiatives that we get here in Peterborough. So we need to be there to access these things. So it is important, but we need to have an internal process that is consistent and equitable for all of these talented councillors around this table who may want to participate on those boards. Maybe at AMO this August, there are going to be elections at AMO. Maybe there are 3 or 4 people around this table who are interested. We need to have a process that is led by our leadership for deciding who's going to be running for these things. I put my name forward back in March to be on the Ontario Small Urban Municipalities Board, which is under the umbrella of AMO, because I think it's so important that we be talking to municipalities our size in order to get policy leverage over so many things that are affecting us all. So it's important to be there. However, I felt uncomfortable because we were talking about how much money it costs to go to Brantford and to stay in a hotel and what's the transportation. $500, $1,000 for the whole year. And I withdrew the motion because we shouldn't be doing that publicly at this table. If we value it, let's create a process as an executive for doing this, and let's have it be affirmed through our budget process so that we know it's fair, so that we're all getting equal opportunity at these things, and that we're bringing it forward to the table in a consistent way. I brought mine forward as an individual motion because that was the instruction I was given. But this one's come forth as a mayor's report. So, you know, we have to get some systems in place to make sure that we're present at tables and that we're doing it in a systematic way that's fair for everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Lachika. I have Councillor Parnell, Mayor Leal, Councillor Baldwin Burke. Councillor Parnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through communication with Councillor Duguay and Mayor Leal, I did suggest the change in the wording. We have in the previous term of council passed a very similar motion, and it said all costs that would be covered. And I was really uncomfortable with that back then because there was no limit to it. There was no definition. So just by saying reasonable costs, it suggests that yes, you're not taking the $3,000 a night penthouse suite wherever you go. You're going to take, a standard hotel room and, know you're there representing municipality and be respectful. And I have zero concern about Councillor Duguay. I know he will do that for sure. But we're setting a precedent for future terms of council. So it was just a responsible thing to do, to have some kind of wording in there that's reasonable costs and within policy, because we do have rules about what the municipal tax dollar will cover when we do go away. Right. So we're just a little bit of clarity on the motion. The mayor agreed. I will support him in that, and I fully support Councillor Duguay running for this position. He's very intelligent, well spoken. He will represent us very, very well with respect, and so I do totally endorse you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Parnell. Mayor Leal.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Mr. Chair, this is not a very good process to do these kind of recommendations, and I agree with Councillor Lachika. In fact, I did send her an email, and I'll send an email to others asking for suggestions on how we can improve this process, because this is not a great way of doing this. I've always, since I've been mayor, I've encouraged anybody who wants to run for election for the FCM, for Awesome, or AMO. I encourage you to do so. And if I have to make additional allocations out of my budget to help members of council who want to do that, I will, because I think it's extremely important. And I did support Councillor Chica when she wanted to run as a director, because I think that's important for this council, and I think it's a wise thing to do. And in fact, it's interesting. Councillor Riel is consistent. I did look at a motion from March 30th, 2020, whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, represents the interests of municipalities on policy and program matters that fall within federal jurisdiction, whereas FCM Board of Directors is comprised of elected municipal officials from all regions, sizes of community, form local base, and support provide FCM with the prestige required to carry the municipal message to the federal government. And goes whereas, and at that particular time, council voted in the affirmative to send then Councillor Wright to run for election for FCM board. So I did not know until I found this today that the city of Peterborough had expressed interest in FCM. But it's interesting, we talk about the number of communities and the scope of communities that are now participating in FCM. And I want to thank Sarah McDougall-Parent for providing me with this information that is germane to Eastern Ontario. We have Belleville with a population of 55,000, they're participants. Brockville, 22,000, they're participants. Cornwall, 47,000. Kingston, Gananoque at 5,380, they're now members of FCM. Pembroke, Quinte West, Prescott, Smith Falls, and now Peterborough wants to join FCM. It is abundantly clear that the government of Canada want to deal with FCM. They now use FCM as a transfer agency, particularly for the Green Initiatives program. And when you read some of their announcements, it was like a 150-item buffet in the last 2 weeks. Many of their housing programs are going to be administered through FCM. So as the mayor of Cornwall indicated to me last Friday, Justin Towndale, he said, look, we got to be at the table because when you look at some of the announcements that have been made in housing over the last 4 months, it looks like all the really big cities have been first in line. Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, Winnipeg, Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto. They got their oar in the water. They got the audiences with members of the federal government, and they've been successful in these funding initiatives. So I happen to think this is a very important and good thing to do. And if anybody around this table wants to run for a director of AMO, come and see me. We'll help them out. But we do, as Councilor Chica said, we need to have a better process in place to get approvals for member of council who want to run for these positions. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Lil. Councillor Baldwin, Burke, Duguay. Councillor Baldwin?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I don't want to argue with myself again. I do want to ask a question through you to the clerk. Mr. Kennedy, the motion that was, the amendment that was just passed, does that now mean that we're limiting the candidate to a max of $4,000 from the mayor's budget?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The amendment does read that council assume costs up to $4,000 from the mayor's budget. And I may have to defer to Mr. Freeman if there was also an additional budget for the council itself or not. That's a question, but you are correct that the motion does read for costs up to $4,000 from the mayor's budget.
I'm wondering, Mr. Kennedy, if I might ask the mayor another question before I talk about the report. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mayor Leo. Jeff, the motion that the amendment passed up to $4,000. If Mr. Duguay travels to Calgary and he comes back with a bill in excess of $4,000 that you deem reasonable, I'm going to assume that you're going to top up that money. Would that be correct?
I would, with Councillor Duguay provided me with all necessary receipts and documentation to anything above that threshold level.
Thank you for that. So speaking to the main motion, Mr. Chair, I certainly wholeheartedly endorse Councillor Duguay to go to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities convention and seek a seat on the board of directors. Through my career, I've been to a number of conferences, and at every single one, you always learn something from being there, either from the presenters or through networking at any of those conferences. So I think it's an important opportunity for Councillor Duguay personally, but more importantly, he'll be able to bring back some very good information that will help this council going forward to make any decisions that will impact us in a positive way. So absolutely 100% endorse the report. And the reason, Mr. Chair, I didn't support the $4,000 for the question I just asked, it would limit that amount. So the mayor's, he's answered my question and happy to support Mr. Dugay's candidacy.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Baldwin. Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Chair Beamer. And I'd like to point out, I think this is a really healthy conversation, and I think that these are just some growing pains that we're experiencing from where we were last year to where we are now under CA Orena, we have actually established some clarity in as council people, where there was like a lot of gray area in terms of what our budget looks like. We really have. And as a first term councillor, it's much more clear to me this year what the limitations of my personal budget are. And I think that we're just asking, and it's like it's been mentioned, there's a need to have some clarity around this specific thing that's come up twice now. And maybe if it can't work out, so it's like everyone gets the same amount, like we heard earlier, maybe we could put an amendment or an addition to the motion to say that staff comes back to us, and they do things like look at how other communities are funding their councillors to go to these things. They could look at maybe as council we could help establish a list of things that would qualify for us to spend these extra expenses on and things that wouldn't. But it would be interesting for staff to come back with us with a report that looks at all these things that we're bringing up tonight that we're sort of flip-flopping on trying to find answers for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. I was hesitant to speak to the matter, but I think it's appropriate that I should. To begin with, my intent to seek nomination to serve as one of FCM, one of 16 Ontario Board of Directors, was prompted by a member of FCM who was visiting this community on a matter that FCM was coordinating on behalf of the federal government. We had a healthy dialogue indicating that perhaps it would be appropriate for Peterborough to consider a councillor serving on FCM. As we talked further, this FCM member recognized some of my professional background and municipal experience and identified it would be valuable at that table. Following, for example, our federal budget, as Mayor Leal has stated, FCM is referenced countless times as a critical partner. My objective is frankly to ensure that our community, our voice of our community is effectively heard at critical moments in decision making, because currently it's not. And this is a partnership opportunity that's being extended to our community by way of having a council member serving on FCM. For my council members and for the members of the public that might be listening, the attendance at Calgary is required and strongly encouraged by FCM staff, because you actually have to. There's opportunities for candidates seeking a directorship to speak to at the annual general meeting. So it's a bit of lobbying, if you would. I would also clarify that during the calendar year, there would be one additional ensuing in-person meeting in Ottawa. Other director meetings are held in hybrid format, and moreover, there are certain committees which you can attend, for example, housing, green infrastructure, that you could serve. I've confirmed through the input from Sarah McDougall-Parent that almost all of those meetings are done hybrid format. So plainly stated, colleagues and members of the public, this is an opportunity to serve my community, our community, and I welcome the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duguay. Mayor Leal, second time.
Chair, I don't want to be in this position. So I really think just following up for Councillor Burke, we do need a policy here that we can apply on a consistent basis for anybody that wants to seek these very important positions in terms of municipal governance and funding, not only in the province of Ontario, but throughout Canada. And the sooner that we can get to a new policy framework, I would welcome that greatly.
All right, any further comments or questions? Just quickly, I'm going to be consistent on this. I oppose Councillor Lachika, so I'm going to oppose Councillor Duguay. It's nothing personal. I do think we need a better process, and I do think we need all the information. Even tonight, we didn't quite know what the cost was. So whatever that process is, I think it needs to be equitable and fair for everyone. Also, I think we need to do a bit of a better job, quote unquote, advertising this in the community. The reason for it, I'll be just very upfront. The emails I've got this week is saying, don't support this. We have bigger issues, and this is not a wise investment in taxpayer money. So, you know, as a council, we need to do a better job of perhaps explaining through the process why this is so valuable. So moving forward, I'm hoping to support all my colleagues, but I think I have to be consistent. But certainly we do need to have a better, equitable process, and we need to do a better job in the community explaining why this works. And I might become very unpopular, but I'm going to say it also. I think there's responsibility for people who do serve to bring some type of investment back to the community, and that does not necessarily mean funds. That's information, knowledge, contacts. But anyone who does serve on any of these type of boards or committees, being paid for by the property tax dollars, does need to bring back some type of value to the community as well. All right, any further comments or questions? All right, moved by Mayor Leal. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. All right, 12E, request for reinstatement of draft